There is a stillness in the night sky that hides how restless it truly is. When you look upward, you think you are meeting the present, but the truth is, you are always seeing the past. Every star you notice is already a memory, a fragment of light that began its journey long before you were here to catch it. And if light can outlive its source, if it can carry a message across such impossible distances, then perhaps it carries more than just the story of one star. Perhaps, hidden inside the faint shimmer of starlight, there are older stories, ones that do not belong to this universe alone. You feel this thought unfold slowly, like the way a petal might open under morning light. It is not an abrupt realization, but a gradual softening, as though your mind is making room for something larger. The idea is simple, and yet it shifts the ground beneath you. What if our universe is not the first? What if there was another before? It, and traces of that forgotten cosmos, still move among us, too faint to notice unless you know how to look. Everywhere you gaze, light is arriving from somewhere else, and somewhere long ago. The Milky Way itself, that pale river flowing through the dark, is a collective memory of billions of stars, each one sending out photons that have crossed gulfs of space to reach you. But photons are stubborn. They do not care for the smallness of human lifetimes. They will travel for billions of years, unbroken, unblinking. If a universe came before ours, they may even have carried forward its last moments, not in photographs or written words, but in the patterns they form in the cosmic backdrop. Astronomers call this backdrop the cosmic microwave background, the faint afterglow left behind by the Big Bang. You do not need to think of it as noise or static. Think of it as a faded mural painted on the walls of reality itself. In it, there are ripples, small fluctuations that tell us about the earliest times of our universe. But some researchers have wondered, could those ripples be like fingerprints pressed into wet clay? Fingerprints left not by our own cosmic birth, but by something that came before. The thought feels almost forbidden, as if you were trespassing into the memory of something impossibly old. Yet it is peaceful here, not frightening. Like standing in the ruins of an ancient temple and realizing that the stones beneath your feet have seen more than you ever will. In physics, there is an idea called the cyclic universe. It is not a single explosion followed by an endless, cold drift into nothing. Instead, it is a rhythm, expansion, collapse, rebirth, a heartbeat on a scale too large for human senses. If this is true, then the universe you live in now is only one breath of an eternal body. And with each breath, not everything is lost. Some faint trace survives the collapse, a whisper that becomes part of the next breath. You begin to see the sky differently. Every glint of starlight is no longer just a single point in the present, but a thread that might connect you to a reality that is no longer here. A star is not only shining for you now, it might also be carrying the faded echo of a star from an entirely different universe, its light reborn in a form you can see, but never fully recognize. Light has this strange, almost impossible quality. It is both fragile and enduring. A photon can be scattered by a grain of dust, lost forever in the void. And yet, if it escapes, it can travel untouched for billions of years. You can think of it as a letter with no address, wandering endlessly until it happens to pass by. A place where someone, you, is looking up. You catch it, but you have no way of knowing what language it was first written in. This is the nature of cosmic echoes. They are everywhere, but they do not shout their origin. You must listen with the quietest part of yourself to even begin to sense them. It is comforting, in a way, to imagine that nothing truly ends, that even if an entire universe fades away, its light can ripple forward, blending into the fabric of whatever comes next. Your own atoms bear the mark of this same resilience. They are older than you, older than your planet, older even than the stars we see now. They were forged in the hearts of stars that died long ago, perhaps in the final, dimming moments of a universe before ours. Scientists study the fine grain of the cosmic microwave background, the way archaeologists study shards of pottery. They search for imperfections, patterns that do not belong. If they found such a thing, a mark too old, too alien for our own Big Bang to have made, it would be like finding a seashell from another shore, lying in the sand of your own beach, a sign that there is a wider ocean than you ever realized. And yet, the sky does not reveal its secrets easily. The echoes are subtle, drowned in the noise of our own cosmic beginning. They may always be out of reach, like a word you can almost remember but never quite speak. But the mystery itself is enough to keep you looking upward, to keep you wondering what stories might still be drifting toward us, carried by light that began in a world we will never see. There is a strange softness to this thought. It does not demand certainty. It only asks you to hold the possibility, to let it rest in you, the way starlight rests on the surface of a still lake. You do not need to know whether another universe truly existed. You only need to know that the one you are in is not the only way reality could be. And so you breathe in the quiet of the night. You let the darkness above stretch on without end. Somewhere, perhaps, there is still a faint ripple from that earlier cosmos moving silently toward you. You may never know it when it arrives, but that does not matter. It is enough to know that the universe may remember more than it tells. Before there was motion, there may have been stillness. Not the stillness you know, not silence in a room or the pause between words, but a stillness so complete it is almost beyond imagining. No light, no dark, no space for either to exist. And yet, something. You feel it more than you understand. It, the way you might sense the weight of air before a storm. This is the breath before creation. The soft tension, as if reality itself were leaning forward but had not yet stepped. If there truly was a beginning, it may not have been an explosion in the way we picture it. It could have been a quiet gathering, a drawing in the way lungs fill before a sigh. All the matter, all the energy, all the possibilities of stars and galaxies and life, compressed into a single, boundless moment. You cannot point to it, because time itself had not yet begun. Without time, there is no before and no after. Yet the mind still reaches for these words, because it cannot help but arrange reality into a sequence. We speak of before creation as if it were a moment we could approach from behind, but it may be nothing like that. It may be more like the stillness in a heart that has not yet learned to beat. Physics tells us that if the universe began with a big bang, then before that moment, space and time as we know them did not exist. This does not mean there was nothing, for nothing is not an empty room waiting to be filled. Nothing, in this sense, is the absence of the room, the absence of the walls, the absence of the idea of waiting. And yet, from this absence, something emerged. Some theories suggest that our universe may have arisen from a quantum fluctuation, a restless ripple in the deep sea of existence, even when existence seemed impossible. At such scales, the rules you live by dissolve. Particles can appear and vanish without cause, as though reality itself is playing with possibilities. If so, perhaps the breath before creation was not perfectly still, but quietly restless, like a sleeping mind. turning over in its dreams. You can think of it like the pause in music. The moment when every note you have heard is leaning toward the one that has not yet been played. The pause is part of the song. Without it, the music would lose its shape. The beginning of the universe may have been such a pause, not absence, but anticipation. There is another way to see it. If the universe is eternal in some form, perhaps there was never a first breath. Perhaps there has always been a rhythm. Expansion and contraction, rise and fall, life and dissolution. In this view, the breath before creation is not the first breath ever taken, but simply the next. The space between one cosmos exhaling its last and the next inhaling its first. You might picture the end of a previous universe, not in fire, but in a great drawing inward, the fabric of space folding in on itself. All matter returning to the same small, hot, dense state. The moment it reaches that state, there is only balance. No outward push, no inward pull, just a perfect equilibrium, holding itself in that delicate stillness before the scales tip again. And when they do, creation begins anew. Cosmic inflation, the rapid expansion that marked the earliest fraction of a second in our universe, is often described as sudden and violent. But you might think of it instead as the first deep breath after a long silence. All at once, space unfurled, time began to tick, and energy took form. The breath had been drawn, and now it was released. This image softens the harshness of the phrase Big Bang. It becomes less an explosion and more an awakening, like eyes opening for the first time, like light blooming from within a seed. The energy that had been compressed in perfect stillness did not shatter, it flowed, it expanded, like a tide coming in to fill a shore that had been dry for an eternity. You are part of that flow. Every particle that makes you was carried outward in that first rush, expanding with space itself. The breath that began the universe is still moving through you now. In a way, you are part of that exhalation, stretched thin across billions of years in the cosmic background radiation. That faint afterglow of the early universe, we still see traces of the breath. It is not uniform. There are tiny fluctuations, warmer spots, cooler spots, which became the seeds of galaxies. The breath was not perfect. It was textured, and in those textures lay the possibility of everything that followed. Some physicists suggest that the breath before creation might not have been quiet at all from its own perspective, that the quantum foam, the churning fluctuations at unimaginably small scales, was always alive with possibility. But from where you stand, billions of years later, it feels still, because the noise is beyond your hearing. It is like looking at a mountain from far away. Up close, every pebble shifts, every blade of grass sways. But from the distance of the stars, it seems motionless, timeless. The universe before creation may have been just such a mountain, restless within, still without. If you let your thoughts drift far enough, you can almost feel it, the gathering, the weight of everything, folded into nothing, the long inhale that would one day become you. You are not outside of it. You are inside that breath, a small part of its story, and if the universe breathes, then perhaps it will breathe again. The cycle may continue, not as a perfect repetition, but as a rhythm without end. Each breath a little different from the last, each one carrying forward the faintest memory of the one before. When you look up at the stars, you are looking not just at the exhalation of our own universe, but at the possibility of others, past and future, that share the same breath. This thought is not heavy. It is light, like the air you take in without thinking. It does not demand that you solve the mystery. It simply invites you to rest in it. You may never know what truly came before creation, or if before even makes sense beyond our minds. But you can know that the universe you live in has always been moving toward this moment, toward you from the instant it began. And in that sense, you are part of the first breath forever. You are taught to think of time as an arrow. It begins somewhere behind you, passes through the moment you call now, and disappears into the unknown ahead. The arrow never turns back. It is always moving forward, but arrows are only one way to imagine motion. What if time is less like an arrow and more like a river, curving, looping, sometimes doubling back on itself before continuing on? You could still float along it without ever noticing the bend, feeling only the forward pull, never knowing that your path has crossed a place it has been before. The mind finds comfort in straight lines. They are easy to follow. They feel certain. A beginning here, an ending there, and everything in between arranged neatly. But the universe does not always choose straight paths. Light bends around massive objects. Space curves under the weight of matter. Why should time itself be immune to such bending? Physics gives hints that time is woven into space, forming what we call spacetime, and anything woven can be folded, twisted, or looped. If gravity can pull space into curves, perhaps it can also pull time into shapes that the human mind struggles to picture: circles, spirals, endless folds. When you think of a loop, you might imagine repetition, a cycle, the second hand of a clock returning to the top after every minute. But in the deepest layers of physics, a loop in time would not necessarily mean living the same events over and over. It could mean that the start and end points are simply closer than you realized, connected by a hidden curve. If the universe itself is cyclical, then every ending may also be a beginning. The collapse of one era could be the seed of the next. Stars could be born from the ashes of those that came before, galaxies spinning out of the remnants of older ones. And the great expansion of space might eventually fold back toward itself. In such a view, the universe does not age toward nothingness. It breathes, it returns, it renews. Even in the life you know, loops are everywhere. The seasons turn, returning to where they began. The water cycle sends the same molecules through rivers, clouds, and rain again and again. Your own body recycles the atoms you take in, some of which have been part of countless other beings before you. Nature is fluent in circles. Why not time? There is a concept in cosmology that hints at such circularity, the possibility that the Big Bang was not the absolute beginning, but a transition. If the universe expands and then collapses, a big crunch, it could set the stage for another expansion, another bang. And if this has happened before, then time's history is not a single line, but a repeating curve. Each cycle might not be identical, but they would all be connected, like variations on a theme in a piece of music. The music metaphor is gentle and fitting. In music, the return to a refrain is not the same as starting over. It is richer, colored by what has come before. Perhaps each loop of the universe's time is the same, carrying forward echoes, patterns, and subtle traces of what came before. There is also a more subtle possibility that loops in time exist not just on the cosmic scale, but in the fine grain of reality. Some solutions to Einstein's equations of relativity suggest closed time-like curves. paths through spacetime that loop back on themselves. In theory, an object traveling along such a path could return to its own past without violating the local rules of physics. This idea feels strange, even impossible, because your daily experience tells you that yesterday is fixed and tomorrow is not yet here. But this may simply be the limitation of your perspective, like living on a small stretch of road and never seeing that it curves into a circle just beyond the horizon. If time loops exist, you may already be within one and never know it. The end of the loop could be so far beyond human lifetimes, so vast compared to human history, that it feels infinite. Yet, in the eyes of the universe, it could be just one turn of the wheel. This way of seeing time changes the meaning of endings. An ending is no longer a wall, it is a bend. A horizon is not the edge of the world, it is the start of another path. The idea softens the fear of finality. It replaces it with a rhythm you can rest inside, a reminder that nothing truly stands still, and nothing is truly lost. Even your own life, which feels like a line from birth to death, may be part of loops you cannot see. The atoms that make you will return to the world, to the air, the soil, the stars. In this way, your life is not a single arrow shot into the dark, but part of a great endless cycle of matter and energy. If time loops on a cosmic scale, then perhaps universes themselves inherit something from the ones before, not memories in the way you hold them, but patterns in the distribution of matter, the shape of physical laws, the values of the constants that govern everything. In this way, even the next universe might carry the faint fingerprints of ours. And so you are left with a thought both humbling and comforting. If time is circular, then the now you are living has been touched, in some way, by moments unimaginably far in the past, perhaps from a universe that no longer exists. And in turn, this moment may someday ripple forward into another loop, another reality. You cannot step outside of time to see the whole circle, just as you cannot leap into the air and see the whole curvature of the earth. But you can trust that the circle is there, even if it looks straight from where you stand. The loops may be vast, or they may be hidden in the smaller scales. They may repeat perfectly, or they may shift each time. You may never know which is true, but you can let the possibility rest in your mind like a slow-turning wheel, easing the edges of what you think of as beginnings and endings. You carry the past within you, even if you do not feel its weight. Every breath you take, every cell that shapes you, is made from matter that has been here before you, long before Earth, long before the sun, perhaps even long before this universe. The hydrogen in your body is ancient beyond measure. It was formed in the first few minutes after the Big Bang, when the newborn universe was still glowing with the heat of creation. Other elements, the carbon in your muscles, the oxygen you breathe, the iron in your blood, were not there at the beginning. They were forged later in the hearts of stars. Stars are alchemists. They take simple elements and, through the crushing weight of their own gravity, fuse them into something new. In the heart of a star, hydrogen atoms are pressed so close together that they merge, becoming helium. Over millions or billions of years, the process continues, building heavier elements: carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, silicon, iron. These are the ingredients of planets, oceans, air, and life. But there is a limit. When a massive star tries to fuse iron, it reaches a point where the process no longer releases energy. It consumes it. Gravity wins, and the star begins to collapse. In its final moments, the collapse triggers an explosion, a supernova. A supernova is not only the death of a star, it is the scattering of its life's work. In that moment, all the elements it forged are thrown into space, mixed with the dust and gas between the stars. These ashes drift for millions of years until gravity gathers them again into new stars, new planets, and eventually new beings. You are one of those beings. The calcium in your bones, the phosphorus in your DNA, all of it came from the death of stars. Carl Sagan's phrase, "You are made of star stuff," is not poetry alone. It is the most literal truth science can offer. And yet, there is a deeper possibility. If the universe is not the first, if there have been cycles before this one, then perhaps some of the matter that makes you is even older. The ashes of ancient stars from a previous universe may have survived the transition between cycles, carried forward into this one. It is difficult to picture how this would happen, because the end of a universe, in any form we can imagine, is extreme. If the universe ends in a heat death, all stars will eventually burn out, leaving only cold remnants. If it ends in a big crunch, everything collapses into an incredibly dense state. And yet, nature has a way of preserving traces, even in endings. Just as seeds can survive winter and bloom again in spring, perhaps matter can survive the death of a cosmos. Some cosmological models suggest that when one universe contracts and collapses, its final state could trigger the birth of a new one. The energy and matter, compressed into unimaginable density, could rebound into expansion. And in that rebound, certain structures, perhaps patterns in quantum fields, might endure, carrying forward a subtle imprint of the universe before IF. So, the iron in your blood might have been forged not once, but twice. First in a star from a previous universe, then again in a star from this one. The atoms themselves are not conscious, but they are persistent. They are the survivors of an ancient story, moving from star to star, world to world, until they find themselves here, in you. When you stand under the night sky, you are looking at light from stars, at many stages of life. Some are just beginning, igniting their first fusion reactions. Others are in their middle age, stable and bright. And some are dying, their fuel running out, their light dimming toward silence. Each death, each scattering of ashes, is also a beginning for the material. Will not disappear. It will be woven into something else. Even now, as you read these words, stars are dying in distant galaxies. Their light will take millions of years to reach here, but their ashes are already drifting through space, already beginning the slow journey toward becoming part of something new. Somewhere, perhaps, the atoms that will one day be part of another. Beings' thoughts are floating between the stars. It is a gentle kind of immortality, not for the form you know yourself to be, but for the matter that shapes you. Long after your life ends, those atoms will still exist, still moving, still ready to become part of something else. And so you are part of a chain with no clear beginning and no final end, a sequence of transformations stretching beyond the reach of memory. The thought can be both humbling and comforting. You are not separate from the universe. You are its continuation. You are a place where the cosmos has gathered itself, for a time, into a form that can think and wonder and feel. And when this form dissolves, the matter will return to the whole, ready to take shape again. Perhaps this is what it means to be the ashes of ancient stars, to carry in your body the history of the universe, written in the language of elements, passed down not through memory but through matter. You are, in a very real way, the latest chapter of a story billions of years old, And if there were universes before ours, then your story is older still. Older than galaxies, older than the familiar laws of physics as you know them. The atoms of your body may have belonged to suns that shone in skies no longer in existence. 2 planets with landscapes no one will ever see. 2 oceans whose waves broke and vanished before our time began. This is not a truth you can prove from where you stand, but it is a truth you can hold, softly, like a seashell whose spiral tells of tides you will never witness. You do not need to know the details to feel the connection. It is enough to know that the universe does not waste its material. Nothing is thrown away. Everything is transformed. The stars die, but their ashes live on, in worlds, in rivers, in breath, in thought, and so you are here. For a while, made of the same matter that once burned in the hearts of ancient suns, perhaps in the hearts of suns from other universes altogether. You are proof that endings can be beginnings, that the ashes of what has been can give life to what will be. There is a rhythm to all things. You hear it in your breath, in the quiet rise and fall that happens without effort. You feel it in the pulse of your blood, the steady contraction and release that carries life through you. And if you look far enough outward, you might begin to wonder if the universe itself moves to a similar rhythm, a cosmic heartbeat, too vast for a human lifetime to notice. In this thought, expansion is the inhale. Space stretches, galaxies drift apart, and the fabric of the cosmos swells outward. This is the moment you are living in now. The breath drawn in, still widening, still unfolding. But an inhale does not last forever. There comes a time when the breath turns, when the air flows back out. If the universe breathes, then contraction is its exhale, the drawing in, the slow return of everything toward a single point. This is not merely poetic imagining. Some cosmological models, particularly those that see the universe as cyclic, suggests that expansion might eventually stop. Gravity, working against the momentum of the initial push, could slow the spread of galaxies. Over billions of years, it might reverse the motion, pulling everything inward again. You can think of this on a timescale so large that your mind struggles to hold it. Each beat of the cosmic heart could last hundreds of billions of years. One complete inhale, one complete exhale, would be longer than the age of the universe you know now. From your perspective, the cosmos would appear static in its rhythm, like a mountain that seems unmoving until you remember it is slowly crumbling, grain by grain. The heartbeat metaphor is more than an image. It mirrors the cycles we see everywhere. In nature, planets orbit their stars. Stars are born, shine, and die, giving rise to new stars. Even galaxies collide and merge, only to form new spiral arms and clusters. The universe has always shown a preference for motion that repeats, not identical each time, but recognizable in its pattern. If the cosmic heartbeat is real, then the Big Bang you have heard about would not be the first. It would be just one of many pulses, one of many moments when contraction turned to expansion, when the inhale began again. Each pulse would carry forward the raw material of the last, perhaps transformed, perhaps altered, but never erased. And in this way, the heartbeat would connect not only space and time, but all forms of matter and energy that have ever existed. You too would be part of the rhythm, not separate from it, but moving within it, shaped by the currents of its breath, in your own body. A heartbeat is not a simple mechanical pump, it is a wave. Each contraction sends ripples of pressure outward, through blood and vessels, into every part of you. The same could be said for the universe's heartbeat. When expansion begins, it is not just space that changes. The very conditions for reality shift. The density of matter drops, temperatures fall, and structures, atoms, molecules, galaxies, emerge. When contraction begins, the opposite happens. Temperatures rise, space shrinks, and the structures dissolve back into simplicity at the turning points. The moment between inhale and exhale, or between exhale and inhale, there is stillness. For a heartbeat, the motion stops, neither expanding nor contracting. It is in these moments, perhaps, that the seeds of the next phase are planted. Scientists do not yet know whether our universe will continue expanding forever, or if it will one day contract. Observations suggest that expansion is accelerating, driven by something called dark energy, a mysterious force that pushes space apart. If dark energy remains constant or grows stronger, the heartbeat may never reverse. The universe may keep inhaling until its contents are so spread out that no new structures can form. This would be a heartbeat that never exhaled, a breath held until all motion stopped. But if dark energy fades, or if gravity's pull eventually overcomes it, then the exhale could come. The expansion would slow, then halt, then reverse. Galaxies would begin to move toward each other, the spaces between stars shrinking, the universe's temperature rising as everything drew closer. Over unimaginable stretches of time, all matter could collapse into a single, dense point, perhaps to be followed by another burst of expansion. If you step back far enough in thought, this possibility becomes soothing rather than frightening. The heartbeat of the universe would mean that nothing is final, not even the death of everything you know. The exhale would lead to another inhale. The cycle would go on. In some versions of this theory, each heartbeat is not perfectly identical. The physics could shift slightly from one to the next. A universe could be born with different laws, different constants, perhaps even different dimensions. In that way, each cycle would be its own distinct world, but all of them connected, as beats in the same eternal rhythm. The scale of this idea is humbling. You live your life in a span so brief that even the smallest fraction of a cosmic heartbeat is longer than all of recorded history. You will never see the heartbeat complete a cycle, yet you are part of it all the same, as much as the galaxies, as much as the stars. The rhythm is not something you can measure in your daily life, but you can feel its reflection in the patterns around you. The tides come in and go out. Seasons turn from winter to spring, summer to autumn, and back again. The moon waxes and wanes. Your own heart beats, your lungs fill and empty. The small rhythms and the great ones echo each other like harmonies in a vast, unending song. Perhaps this is why the idea of a cosmic heartbeat feels so natural. You are already tuned to cycles. You already know, deep down, that motion and stillness alternate, that growth and rest are part of the same process. The universe, in this view, is simply doing what all living things do, breathing in, breathing out. If we are truly in the inhale now, then every galaxy drifting away from us is part of that single motion. The expansion is not a scattering without order. It is the outward sweep of the breath. And somewhere in the far future, perhaps the edges of the inhale will soften, the expansion will slow, and the great exhale will begin. No one knows how many times the heartbeat has pulsed before, if at all. It could be that this is the first and only breath the universe will take. Or it could be the 1,000th, each one building on the last. carrying forward the ashes and patterns of countless universes before it. The truth may be beyond your reach, but the image is enough to rest. Inside, you do not need certainty to feel the calm of this possibility. You only need to remember that even the largest, most distant things may move in ways that feel familiar, ways that echo in your own body. The cosmic heartbeat is not something you can hear, but you can imagine it, a soundless rhythm stretching across eternity, slow and steady, marking the endless rise and fall of all that exists. And perhaps, if the universe truly breathes, then every star, every planet, every being is part of that same inhale and exhale. You are part of it too, a fleeting note in the song, a ripple in the pulse, carried in the flow of something far larger than yourself. There is a light so faint you cannot see it with your eyes, yet it fills the entire universe. It is not the glow of stars, nor the reflection of planets, nor the flicker of distant galaxies. It is older than all of these. It is the remnant heat of creation itself, the cosmic microwave background, a whisper from when the universe was young. You live in a world where night and day are defined by the sun. But if your eyes could see beyond visible light, you would find that the whole sky glows faintly, no matter where you look. This glow is not bound to any single point. It comes from every direction, as if space itself remembers the moment it first became transparent. In the earliest moments after the Big Bang, the universe was not empty space. It was a dense, hot sea of particles and light, all tangled together. In that state, light could not travel freely. It scattered endlessly, bouncing from particle to particle, unable to move in a straight line. But as the universe expanded and cooled, there came a time when atoms could form, and light was released to travel unimpeded. That light has been moving ever since. Over billions of years, as space itself has stretched, its wavelength has lengthened, too, shifting it into the microwave part of the spectrum, far beyond what your eyes can detect. This is why it is called the cosmic microwave background, or CMB. It is not a background in the way a wall is a background to a painting. It is the canvas upon which the universe itself was painted. At first glance, the CMB appears nearly uniform, the same in every direction. But nearly is important. When scientists began to study it in detail, they found tiny variations, small ripples in temperature and density, differences of only a few millionths of a degree. These imperfections are not random noise. They are the fingerprints of the early universe, the seeds from which galaxies would grow. It is humbling to realize that everything, stars, planets, oceans, forests, your own body, began as slight irregularities in a field of light that once filled all of space. Without those ripples, matter would have been evenly spread, and gravity would have had nothing to pull into clumps. There would be no galaxies, no suns, no worlds, no life. These patterns are like the grain in a piece of wood, the marks of how it formed, the story of forces that shaped it long before it became what you see now. Scientists study them the way you might trace the lines on an ancient map, looking for clues about the terrain that once existed. Some researchers have wondered whether the CMB might carry hints of something even older than our own universe's beginnings. If there were events before the Big Bang, a previous universe, a collision with another cosmos, or cycles of contraction and expansion, their traces might be imprinted in this ancient light. It would be subtle, hidden deep in the texture of the CMB, perhaps a circular pattern where the temperature variations are strangely aligned, perhaps an absence a cold spot where something vast passed through long before galaxies formed. These would be the shadows in the cosmic microwave, faint hints of a story we are not yet able to read in full. One of the most intriguing features is something called the cold spot. It is a region of the CMB that is cooler than expected, spanning an area far larger than any single galaxy cluster. Some suggest it could be explained by statistical chance, a random fluctuation in the early universe. Others wonder if it might be the signature of something extraordinary, perhaps a supervoid, or the imprint of a collision between our universe and another. Whether or not these speculations prove true, the fact remains, the CMB is a message from the past. Not a message in words, but in patterns of light and temperature. It is the oldest light we can ever see, a boundary beyond which our instruments cannot look, because there was no transparency before that moment. Beyond it lies a time when the universe was opaque, and perhaps even a time before the universe, as we know it, existed at all. You can think of it like a fog lifting on a vast plain. As the fog clears, you see the landscape stretching out before you, but you can never see what lies behind the fog itself. The CMB is that horizon. It is as far back as light can carry us. What lies beyond is hidden, not because it is not there, but because the nature of the early universe does not allow us to see through it. And yet, we search. Satellites like COBE, WMAP, and Planck have mapped the CMB in exquisite detail, revealing its tiny fluctuations with increasing clarity. Each new map is like a more finely drawn chart of an ancient coast, where every contour might tell of forces older than we can imagine. The patterns are delicate, almost shy. They do not shout their meaning, but in them, cosmologists can test their theories about how the universe expanded, how matter was distributed, and whether inflation, the rapid swelling of space in the first instant after the Big Bang, truly happened. If there are deviations from these expectations, they might point to new physics, or to the influence of something from outside our cosmic horizon. You cannot hold the CMB in your hands, but you can hold the thought of it in your mind. Imagine light that has been traveling for 13.8 billion years, only now arriving here, only now touching your detectors. That light has crossed the universe, not as a straight line through empty space, but as a path through the shifting fabric of spacetime, stretched by expansion, bent by gravity, carrying the quiet imprint of everything it passed. There is a tenderness in this. To study the CMB is to listen to the softest possible echo, the fading sound of the universe's first breath. It is almost gone, stretched thin, cooled to just a few degrees above absolute zero, and yet it is still here, wrapping around you in all directions. Perhaps the most humbling thing about the CMB is that it is everywhere. Every point in space, no matter how far apart, is bathed in it. If you could stand in the most distant galaxy and look around, you would see the same glow, the same faint afterimage of creation. It is a reminder that the universe has a shared origin, that no matter where you are connected to that first light. The shadows within it, the cold spots, the alignments, the ripples, may never fully reveal their secrets. They may be artifacts of chance, or they may be hints of something beyond our universe's visible edge. Either way, they invite you to keep looking, to keep wondering, because, in the end, the CMB is not just a relic, it is a mirror. When you study it, you are also studying your own beginnings. The atoms that make you were once part of that same glowing sea, moving through the same fog of light. You are not separate from it. You are one of its outcomes, shaped by the patterns it holds. Some forces fade quickly, vanishing almost as soon as they appear. But gravity is patient. It lingers. It endures. It does not forget easily. Long after light has dimmed, gravity still reaches across the void. Even when the stars have burned out, it will be there, a thread connecting what remains. It does not rush, and it does not weaken with age. Its influence travels endlessly, carrying with it a silent imprint of the masses that once shaped it. You can think of gravity as a memory written into the fabric of space. A massive object bends that fabric, and the bend remains for as long as the mass is there. The curvature it creates is like a story pressed into soft clay, not with words, but with shape. When a planet orbits a star, it is following the shape that gravity has carved into space around that star. And when the star dies, its gravity changes, but it does not vanish instantly. The bend is altered, not erased. In this way, gravity preserves a trace of what once was, even as the universe moves on. On the largest scales, gravity is the archivist of the cosmos. It holds galaxies together across billions of years, guiding their slow rotations. It gathers matter into clusters, weaving a cosmic web whose strands stretch across hundreds of millions of light years. And in the spaces between those strands, it keeps record of the voids, places where almost nothing exists, yet whose shape is still defined by the gravitational pull of distant structures. Even black holes are part of this memory. They are the most intense expressions of gravity, regions where the bending of space becomes so extreme that nothing, not even light, can escape. And yet, from far enough away, a black hole's pull is not so different from that of any other object of the same mass. It is as though gravity is telling you something is here, without revealing exactly what it is. In a sense, every gravitational field you feel today is a story about the past. The pull of the moon on Earth carries the memory of its formation, when debris from a colossal impact gathered into a companion world. The orbit of the planets remembers the swirling disk of gas and dust from which they formed. The very motion of the sun around the center of the Milky Way is an echo of the galaxy's long history, shaped by mergers and collisions with other galaxies. But gravity's memory is not perfect. It cannot tell you everything. It does not keep the details, only the broad strokes, the mass, the distance, the pull. The finer features are lost, just as the ripples from a pebble thrown into a pond fade into wider, slower waves. And yet, in the vastness of the cosmos, even these faint waves can travel forever. They become what we call gravitational waves, ripples in space-time itself, moving at the speed of light, carrying news of violent events, black holes merging, neutron stars colliding. These waves grow weaker as they spread, but they do not stop. If you had a detector sensitive enough, you could, in theory, feel the tremor from a collision billions of years ago. It is this persistence that makes gravity a kind of timekeeper. Light can be blocked, absorbed, scattered, but gravity passes through everything, largely unchanged. The pull you feel from the sun right now began 8 minutes ago, when its light left the surface, but the gravitational influence of its mass has been shaping your orbit for billions of years. In the cosmic microwave background, we saw how light can store an image of the early universe. In gravity, we find a different kind of record, one that holds the shape of the universe's structure rather than its image. Where light tells us how the young cosmos looked, gravity tells us how it has moved, how it has grown, and how it has held itself together. Even the largest structures we see today, superclusters of galaxies, are not bound by any physical walls, but by the gentle persistence of gravity. These structures may eventually drift apart if cosmic expansion keeps accelerating. But for now, gravity remembers them, binding them in patterns that have lasted for hundreds of millions of years. The thought that gravity might carry memories from before our own universe is more difficult to hold, but it is not impossible. If there were cycles before this one, if other universes collapsed and gave rise to ours, perhaps the shape of their matter left an imprint that could still be felt faint and distorted in the way our space is curved today. We may never detect such a thing. It would be like trying to read the faded imprint of a note written on a page, long after the ink has been erased and the paper reused. But the possibility lingers, quietly. Gravity is, after all, not a thing that fades quickly in your own life. You can feel something similar. A place you once lived still carries your memory, not in photographs, but in the way the floor has worn under years of footsteps, in the small changes you left without noticing. Gravity is like that on the scale of the universe. It keeps the wear marks of what has passed, and so, when you look up at the night sky, you are not only seeing light from the past, you are standing in a field of gravitational memories, the quiet pull of countless objects that have shaped the space you inhabit. Some of them are still there. Others may be gone, their light long vanished, their matter scattered, but their pull remains, a silent signature written into the geometry of reality itself. Gravity does not speak in words or images. It speaks in orbits, in curves, in the way things fall. To listen to it is to pay attention to the way space itself bends around mass, to notice that the shape of the path you take is not entirely your own. Perhaps that is why gravity feels so much like memory. You cannot hold it in your hand, but you can feel its influence in the present, even when its source lies deep in the past. It shapes your movement without demanding your attention. It is always there, quiet but unyielding. There is a kind of quiet that is not the absence of sound, but the presence of something waiting. You have felt it before, in the breathless moment between the last note of a song and the first of the next, in the space between a thought fading and another beginning. It is not empty. It is full of potential. If the universe is part of a cycle, if there was one before ours and there will be another after, then there may be such a moment between them, a silence between universes. In your mind, you might imagine it as a vast and empty expanse. No stars, no galaxies, no matter at all. But perhaps that picture is misleading, because silence does not mean nothingness. A musical rest is not the destruction of the melody. It is part of the melody. The pause holds the memory of what came before and the anticipation of what is to come. If there was a universe before this one, it ended in some final act, perhaps a collapse, perhaps a slow fading into cold emptiness. What happened in the instant after that ending? Did time itself stop? Or did it continue quietly, without motion or change, like a lake without wind? Some cosmologists imagine a bounce, the moment when a collapsing universe reaches a point so dense that it cannot collapse further, and instead turns outward again. The silence, in this view, might be unimaginably short, a fraction of a second before the rebound. Others imagine a slower transition, where the last structures dissolve, and there is a long, still interval before something stirs again. The difficulty in picturing this silence is that we live in a universe where change never stops, even when you sleep. Your heart beats, your lungs fill and empty, your atoms vibrate. time moves forward, always carrying you with it. But the silence between universes may not be like that. It may be outside of time as we know it, not a moment you could count, but a pause in the very existence of moments. This makes the silence something more than emptiness. It becomes a kind of holding space where all possibilities are gathered. The laws of physics, the constants of nature, the seeds of matter and energy, all of them resting unexpressed until the next expansion begins. If you could step into that silence, you would find nothing to touch, nothing to see, and yet you would feel surrounded not by objects, but by the weight of what is about to be. Like standing in darkness just before dawn, you would know that light is coming, though you could not yet see it. There is comfort in this idea. The silence between universes is not destruction, but rest. It is the interval that allows the next creation to arrive with freshness, the way a pause in music allows the next note to have meaning. Without pauses, music is only noise. Without stillness, motion loses its contrast. In this view, the silence is essential. It is part of the heartbeat of reality, the still point between inhale and exhale. It is where the old dissolves completely, making space for the new. But there is another way to think about it, one that is less gentle, more mysterious. The silence might not be a clean separation between universes, but an overlapping space where remnants of the old and seeds of the new coexist. Not like a pause between songs, but like the moment when one wave in the ocean has not yet finished falling, while the next has already begun to rise. If this is true, then perhaps the silence is not entirely still. It might contain faint echoes, the last gravitational waves from the old universe's final events, the subtlest ripples in spacetime carrying forward patterns that will shape the next cosmos. The silence would then be less like a blank page and more like paper faintly impressed by the writing that was once on it. Whether perfectly still or gently rippled, the silence remains unreachable to us. The cosmic microwave background is as far back as light can carry us. Beyond that horizon, we cannot see. The silence, if it exists, lies further still. It is beyond observation, beyond the fabric of the universe we inhabit. Yet the mind reaches for it anyway, because it feels incomplete to imagine a beginning without asking what came before, or an ending without wondering what follows. The silence is where those questions live, not answered, but held. Perhaps the most haunting thing about the silence between universes is that it could be the most natural thing in existence, and yet we may never know it directly. We are creatures of movement, bound to the flow of time. The stillness outside that flow is as foreign to us as the idea of seeing without eyes, or hearing without ears, and still you can let the thought rest in you, not to solve it, but to feel its shape, a space with no space, a moment with no time, the breath held in the chest of eternity. If the silence is part of a cycle, then it has happened before, countless times, and it will happen again. Each time, it erases the particular forms that have been galaxies, stars, worlds, beings, but not the capacity for form itself. That capacity is eternal, ready to take on new shapes. You are living in the middle of the music, in the notes. Between silences, everything you see is part of the current verse, part of this universe's unique arrangement. But the silence is still there, waiting in the distance, not as an end, but as a turning point. Some may find this thought unsettling, but it can be a source of peace. Just as night follows day and day follows night, just as seasons turn and tides, return, so too might universes breathe in and out, their silences as vital as their bursts of creation. In this rhythm, nothing is truly lost. The silence does not destroy, it transforms. It is the field in which the seeds of the next reality lie sleeping. Some things change with time, the shape of mountains, the course of rivers, the light of stars. But some things, it seems, do not change at all. They hold steady across the ages, as if they belong to a deeper layer of reality, one untouched by the chaos of creation and destruction. You know them as the constants, the speed of light, the strength of gravity, the charge of the electron, numbers so precise, so consistent, that every star and every atom in the universe is built upon them. Without these values, the cosmos would be unrecognizable. These constants are not merely measurements. They are the quiet agreements reality has made with itself. The speed of light is the same in every corner of the universe, whether in the emptiness between galaxies or in the heart of a star. Gravity pulls with the same strength on Earth as it does on worlds you will never see. When you think about the end of the universe, the fading of light, the scattering of galaxies, the collapse of stars, you might wonder what happens to these constants then. Do they vanish with the matter they govern, or do they endure, waiting for the next beginning? Some physicists suggest that the constants are written into the very structure of spacetime. If space and time are reborn in a new universe, perhaps these laws return with them, unchanged. In this way, the constants are like the grammar of existence, the rules that shape every sentence. No matter what words are used, if there were universes before ours, it is possible they were guided by the same constants. The same speed of light setting the limit for all motion. The same balance between gravity and expansion deciding the fate of galaxies. If so, then these laws have survived more than one cosmic death. They have moved through the silence between universes, untouched, ready to begin again. There is another possibility, that the constants themselves may slowly drift, changing from one universe to the next. If so, then each cosmos is a variation on a theme, its own unique arrangement of the same deep melody. In this picture, the constants are not immortal, but they are enduring. They evolve, but they do not disappear. Either way, there is a kind of immortality here. Matter may dissolve, stars may fade, but the principles that allow matter and stars to exist in the first place may continue. They are not things in the ordinary sense. You cannot hold them, measure their weight, or break them apart. They are patterns, relationships, the quiet ratios that allow reality to hold its shape. You can think of them as the threads in a loom. The cloth woven upon them can be torn apart, rewoven, or even replaced entirely, but the threads themselves remain, stretched across the frame, defining the shape of whatever is made. It is humbling to think that you live inside such a pattern. Every moment of your existence depends on the stability of these constants, the way atoms bind together, the way light travels from the sun to your eyes, the way your body stands on the ground instead of floating away. All of it is bound to the same deep rules that shaped the first galaxies. If these laws truly never die, then they have seen more than any star, more than any planet. They are older than the universe, you know, and they may be older than every universe that has ever been. They may be the only true immortals, unchanging witnesses to the rise and fall of all else, and perhaps they are not simply passive witnesses. Perhaps the constants themselves are what make universes possible at all. Without them, there would be no stable atoms, no stars to burn, no chemistry to grow complexity. In this way, the constants are like the soil in which every cosmos is planted. When the current universe ends, it may be that all matter and energy are transformed, scattered, or compressed beyond recognition. But the laws, the speed limits, the strengths, the balances may persist in some form, ready to guide the next creation. If so, then you are not just living in one universe's fleeting chapter. You are part of a much longer story, a story written in the same language, even if the worlds it describes change completely from one telling to the next. And there is a strange comfort in this, because it means that something of this universe, of the forces and principles that make you possible, will continue, even when all else is gone. You are not separate from those laws. You are an expression of them. In living, you echo the same patterns that may have existed for eternity. Perhaps one day, far beyond any horizon we can imagine, another being in another universe will measure the speed of light and find it to be the same. They will feel the same pull of gravity, the same dance of particles, and they will be connected to you not by time or place, but by the deep laws you share. There is a thought that feels both heavy and strangely peaceful. What if the universe does not end in silence, but in return? You live now in an age of expansion. Galaxies drift apart, carried by the stretching of space itself. The more distant they are, the faster they seem to move away, as though space is an ever-widening river, carrying everything with it. From where you stand, it feels endless, as if the flow could go on forever. But what if it doesn't? What if there comes a day when the river slows, hesitates, and begins to turn back? The idea of the big crunch begins there, with the possibility that gravity, patient and unyielding, will one day overcome expansion, that the outward rush will falter, and the pull inward will take its place. Slowly, at first, almost unnoticeably, the distances between galaxies would stop growing. Then, over billions of years, they would begin to shrink. This would not be the fall of objects through space, but the fall of space itself. The very fabric that now stretches would start to contract. The light from distant galaxies, already redshifted by expansion, would shift back toward blue as they approached. The night sky would grow brighter, not from new stars being born, but from old stars drawing closer. Eventually, the great clusters of galaxies would merge, drawn together by the tightening web of gravity. Collisions would become frequent, vast, swirls of stars and gas folding into single, enormous structures. The empty stretches between them would vanish, replaced by a universe increasingly crowded, increasingly hot. As the contraction continued, the temperature of the universe would begin to rise. Background radiation, now cooled to just above absolute zero, would grow warmer. The light of the ancient cosmos would compress, its wavelength shortening, its energy increasing. Space would become a furnace once again. Stars would not survive this forever. The collisions of galaxies would stir clouds of gas into violent bursts of star formation. But these new stars would live short, fierce lives, burning out in only millions of years. Supernova after supernova would flare, each one adding to the growing heat. And yet, even as new stars ignited, the contraction would continue. The universe would grow smaller, denser, hotter. Black holes, the remnants of massive stars, would drift together, merging into larger and larger singularities. Eventually, entire galaxies could collapse into monstrous black holes, each holding the mass of billions of suns. Then even these would begin to merge. Gravity would pull them into one another, until only a few supermassive black holes remained. And finally, perhaps only one by this stage, the universe would be a place without the familiar structures you know now. No quiet stretches of darkness between galaxies, no gentle spirals of stars. Instead, a seething ocean of radiation and matter, packed closer and closer together. As the contraction reached its final stages, space and time themselves would begin to behave differently. The scales you think of, seconds, years, light years, would lose meaning. Every part of the universe would be in contact with every other, compressed into a fraction of the size it once was. The temperature would rise to unimaginable levels, and the density would soar. And then, the final moment of the big crunch. It is hard to picture, because there is no outside from which to watch. The universe does not collapse into something within a larger space. It is space itself that is collapsing. All distances become zero. All time perhaps ends. From within, it might not feel like a moment of destruction. It might feel like the moment before an inhale, the silence between breaths. In this view, the big crunch is not an ending, but the preparation for a beginning, because some theories suggest that when the universe reaches this state of maximum density, something happens. Instead of ending, it rebounds. The immense pressure could force a new expansion, another big bang, creating a new universe from the ashes of the old. If this is true, then the big crunch is the heartbeat's exhale, followed by another inhale. A rhythm stretching across eternity, each universe born from the death of the one before. You can imagine it as a circle, without beginning or end. Expansion gives way to contraction. Contraction gives way to expansion. In each cycle, matter is reshaped, stars are reborn, planets form anew, and perhaps even life arises again, though not in exactly the same way as before. There is a gentleness in this picture, even in its enormity. Nothing is truly lost. Everything is transformed. The galaxies you see now would not survive into the next universe, but their matter, their stars, their dust, their light would be part of it, and perhaps some subtle imprint of their arrangement would carry over, just as the grain of a tree can be seen in every piece of wood it yields. Still, we do not know if the big crunch will ever come. Observations suggest that the expansion of the universe is accelerating, driven by something we call dark energy. If that acceleration continues forever, there will be no contraction, only a gradual drifting apart into cold and emptiness. The heartbeat would be broken, the rhythm unreturned. But if dark energy changes, or if gravity finds a way to overcome it, the story could be different. The river could turn. The current could bring everything home again, in the face of such vast uncertainty. What matters is not the prediction, but the perspective it offers. The big crunch reminds you that endings may not be absolute, that even the collapse of all things could be the start of something new. That time itself might be cyclical, carrying forward the essence of the old into the birth of the new. And so, as you drift deeper into this thought, you realize you are part of this story. The atoms in your body, the light in your eyes, the breath in your lungs, all of it could one day be drawn back into the great contraction, carried inward toward the heart of the universe. Not as loss, but as return. The big crunch, if it comes, will be beyond your lifetime, beyond the lifetime of your species, beyond the lifetime of stars themselves. But it may not be beyond the lifetime of the universe. And in that scale, your existence is a note in the music of expansion, a part of the verse that will someday resolve into the chorus of collapse. you do not need to fear that. You can rest in the knowledge that everything you are is part of something continuous, that even when everything collapses, the laws that shape reality may remain, guiding the next beginning. There is a place in reality so small that it feels almost like a thought, a whisper, a shimmer at the edge of knowing. It is not a place you can see or touch or even visit. It is not made of things in the way you usually think of things. It is made of possibilities, of flickers that are here and then not, existing only for the briefest of instants before dissolving again into something unseen. This is the quantum fog, the restless foundation upon which all of reality stands. In the world you know, you expect stability. A rock stays where it is. A cup remains on the table, but in the deep layers of reality, stability is an illusion. The very fabric of space is alive with motion, even in its most empty regions. Particles appear and vanish constantly, borrowing energy from nothing and then returning it in the smallest fractions of a second. Physicists call this quantum fluctuation, but to you, it can feel more like a trembling, a breath in the dark. Most of these flickers are harmless background, like the faint static in an old recording. They leave no lasting mark, no evidence that they were ever there. But some researchers have wondered, could there be particles or patterns in this quantum fog that are not new? Could some of them be relics, survivors from before the beginning of our universe? If there were universes before ours, their end might have scattered not only galaxies and stars, but the tiniest building blocks of reality. And while most of those fragments would have been remade in the fire of a new Big Bang, perhaps a few could have slipped through, hidden in the smallest spaces, carried forward like seeds into new soil. The quantum world is strange enough to make this possible. Here, size is measured in probabilities, not in points. A particle does not have a fixed position until you measure it. It is a cloud of possibilities. In that cloud, there may be structures too subtle to notice, too ancient to fit the patterns of our own cosmic birth. Imagine a tiny fragment, smaller than an atom, smaller than the particles inside atoms, that carries within it a signature of an earlier universe. It has no memory in the way you do, no awareness, but its very nature might differ just slightly from the particles born in our Big Bang. It might spin in a way that hints at older rules, or hold a charge that does not fit our current laws. We have not found such relics yet, but there are whispers in the data, anomalies, faint and persistent, that do not match our expectations. They might be errors, they might be signals, and in the quiet space of thought, you can hold the possibility that they are fragments of a reality older than our own. The quantum fog is not empty. Even here, energy flows. Virtual particles flicker in pairs, appearing together, then annihilating each other almost instantly. But the space between those instants may hold something more, a pattern, like the ghost of a shape drawn in water before it vanishes. In a way, all of reality is built upon this fog. Every atom in your body is shaped by quantum fields, by the restless hum of possibilities beneath matter. Without it, there would be no structure, no form, no you. If ancient relics are hidden in this fog, they are not separate from you. They would be part of the same fields that give rise to your existence. You could be, in some small way, made of pieces that have survived more than one universe. The idea is almost too large to hold, that you might carry, in the smallest depths of your being, fragments of a world that existed before time as you know it. But the quantum world is not limited by your sense of scale. It can hold the vast within the tiny, just as it can hold the possibility of many histories within a single instant. The search for such relics is ongoing. Physicists build machines that smash particles together at near the speed of light, hoping that the debris will reveal something unexpected. They listen for faint signals in the cosmic background, looking for patterns that do not belong. And though no clear answer has yet appeared, the question remains alive, a quiet presence, like the hum beneath a song. There is a strange comfort in knowing that the smallest scales of reality are still a mystery. You are not living in a finished picture, but in one still being painted. And in the spaces between brushstrokes, there may be details older than the canvas itself. Perhaps these relics, if they exist, are not meant to be found easily. They might be too deep, too subtle, requiring not only new tools but new ways of thinking. They might reveal themselves only when the universe is ready, or when we are, until then they remain in the fog, flickering in and out, carrying whatever it is they carry across the unimaginable distances of time. They are patient. They do not need to hurry. They have already survived the death of at least one universe, and perhaps that is the lesson they offer. Survival does not always mean remaining unchanged. In the quantum fog, everything shifts, everything moves, everything is in flux. But some patterns endure through the change. They adapt, they blend, they hide within the currents, and so they persist. You are part of this too. The atoms that make you are not fixed objects. They are patterns in the quantum fields, sustained by the same restless hum. You are, in a way, a living ripple in the fog, a form that is gathered for a time, and that will eventually dissolve back into the background, leaving space for other forms to rise. It is not an ending to fear. It is part of the rhythm. And if the smallest fragments can survive across universes, then perhaps the patterns that shape you, the relationships, the balances, the deep rules can survive too. You are certain of one thing: the moments of your life flow in a single direction. You wake, you live, you sleep. You do not return to yesterday. The arrow of time points forward, always forward. But what if this arrow is not absolute? What if time could turn, bend, or even run the other way? Not just in your imagination, but in the very structure of the cosmos. In your daily life, the forward motion of time is tied to change. You see a glass fall and shatter, but never see. The shards leap up and assemble themselves again. You watch a candle burn down, never up. These are the small certainties that convince you time is one way. Physics calls this the arrow of time, and it is closely linked to entropy, the tendency of systems to move from order toward disorder. Once a cup has shattered, there are far more possible ways for its pieces to stay broken than for them to fit back together. It is not impossible for them to reassemble, just unimaginably unlikely. But when you step back from the scale of cups and candles and look at the universe as a whole, the certainty begins to soften. The equations that describe the fundamental laws of nature, the movement of particles, the bending of spacetime, do not insist that time must only move forward. They work just as well in reverse. If you were to watch the orbits of planets, or the dance of galaxies in reverse, the mathematics would still hold. At the most fundamental level, time is symmetrical. It is we and the conditions we live in that make it feel otherwise. Now, imagine a universe where the great expansion slows, stops, and reverses the big crunch you've already wandered through in thought. As space contracts, galaxies draw together, stars crowd closer, and everything begins to compress. Could this contraction be, in some deep sense, a reversal of time itself. In such a scenario, entropy might decrease instead of increase. Broken things might, in theory, reassemble. The scattered heat of the cosmos might concentrate again. From the inside, you might feel as if time was still moving forward, because your memories would reverse with it. But from the outside, if there were such a vantage point, the universe could appear to be rewinding. It is a dizzying thought that the end of our cosmos could be the mirror image of its beginning, not only in space, but in time. The river would not simply dry up. It would turn around and flow back toward its source. Some theories go further, imagining that our Big Bang was not the start of time, but the middle point of a greater flow, with one universe moving forward from it and another moving backward into it. In this picture, time itself is like a river branching in two opposite directions from a single spring. If this is true, then the reverse-flowing universe would be as real as ours, but utterly inaccessible. Its inhabitants, if such beings could exist, would see their own arrow of time pointing forward from their perspective, never suspecting that from ours they are moving into the past. The symmetry is strangely beautiful. To universes, born from the same origin, flowing away from each other, not in space, but in time, each would see itself as expanding, creating, aging, yet each would be the other's reverse. In the quantum world, where particles can behave as both waves and points, there are already hints that time may be less rigid than it seems. Some processes are so delicate that reversing them is not forbidden by the laws of physics, only by the improbability of arranging the universe just so. This leaves open the smallest of doors, the possibility that, under the right conditions, the river could truly flow both ways. Of course, for you, time's current feels unstoppable. It carries you from birth to death, from memory to forgetfulness. You cannot swim backward in it. But perhaps, on the largest scales, the current is part of a greater tide, one that turns, one that can carry everything back toward where it began. The image is calming in its way. You are not simply being swept away toward an inevitable end, but moving in one phase of a cycle, one direction of a greater river. Somewhere, unseen, the water may already be flowing the other way, and in that thought lies a kind of quiet promise that the story is never truly finished, because every ending is also the point where another flow begins. There is something deeply comforting about a dawn, not because it is new, but because it has happened before. The sun rises every day, and yet each time it feels like the first. It is this paradox, the repetition of something that still feels fresh, that whispers to you about the nature of creation itself. What if the universe is like that? What if its birth is not a singular, unrepeatable event, but a pattern, a ritual of beginnings that unfolds again and again across an endless backdrop of time? The first dawn you imagine is the Big Bang, a universe born from unimaginable density and heat, expanding, cooling, forming matter, stars, and galaxies. To you, this is the ultimate once, the moment when time itself began. But perhaps it is not the only one. Some theories suggest that our cosmos may be one of many, not in space, but in sequence, a cycle of expansions and contractions, each leading to another burst of creation. In this view, there have been many firsts, and there will be many more. Each one is the beginning of its own time, the opening of its own sky. If so, then the birth of a universe is less like the start of a story, and more like the turning of a wheel. The same motions, the same rhythms, yet never exactly the same details. Just as no two sunrises are identical, no two cosmic dawns would be perfect copies. The ingredients might be familiar: matter, energy, space, time, but their arrangement could change. The physical constants might shift slightly, the shapes of galaxies might differ, the chemistry of life might follow new paths, and yet the deep structure, the underlying act of creation, would echo across every repetition. This is a thought you can rest inside, because it means that nothing, not even the universe itself, is entirely lost. When a cosmos reaches its end, its matter and energy do not vanish. They are transformed, folded into the seeds of the next dawn. You might imagine the silence between universes as a kind of night, long, still, without motion, and then, without warning, the first light returns. It floods the void, not as a gentle sunrise, but as an all-encompassing expansion. Space itself is born in the light, carrying with it the potential for everything that will ever be. Even in your own life, you can feel the echo of this pattern. Every morning is a small Big Bang. The stillness of sleep gives way to movement, thought, and experience. The world appears again, not as it was yesterday, but as it is now, shaped by the cycles that have carried you here. If the universe has repeated its birth before, then you are living inside one chapter of a story that has no beginning and no end. The events you see as unique, the formation of Earth, the rise of life, the sweep of human history, may be rare in detail, but common in pattern. Somewhere, somewhen, the essential shape of these moments may have unfolded before under skies you will never see. This does not diminish their beauty. If anything, it deepens it, because repetition in nature often refines rather than dulls. A tree does not grow identical leaves, yet each spring it repeats the act of growing them. A wave does not return to the shore in exactly the same way, yet the tide repeats its journey endlessly. Creation may be like this, a series of beginnings, each one unique yet connected to the last dot. Scientists have searched for signs that our universe may carry imprints from previous cycles. In the faint patterns of the cosmic microwave background, there could be clues, anomalies, circles, or alignments that hint at events before the Big Bang. If these signs exist, they would be the footprints of earlier dawns, still visible in the fabric of our own. And if no such signs are found, the possibility still remains. For in the great expanse of time, the memory of one universe may not be passed through light or matter, but through the persistence of the laws themselves, the constants, the relationships, the symmetries that govern our cosmos could be the same, ones that shaped countless others. If that is true, then the next universe will not be alien to us in its essence. It will be a new dawn, but it will rise upon a familiar horizon. There is a quiet beauty in imagining the birth of universes as a kind of eternal ceremony. The collapse of one cosmos becomes the offering for the next. The silence between them is the pause in which all is prepared, and the expansion that follows is the light breaking over the edge of time once more. You may wonder how many times this has happened. Once, 1,000 times, an infinity of times. In the scale of eternity, such numbers lose their meaning. All that matters is that the act continues, that the first dawn is never truly the last. This thought can dissolve the fear of endings, because in this pattern, endings are not failures, they are transitions. They are the night that makes the morning possible. Even if we cannot witness another dawn, the one we are living in now is part of that chain. We are its witnesses, its participants, its fleeting forms. And though we will not see it, something will rise after us. The next dawn will not remember us in detail, but it will carry the essence of what we were, just as we carry the essence of the universe that came before. The cycle does not need your presence to continue, but it includes you all the same. You are here for a moment in the light, before returning to the stillness from which all light emerges. And so, the first dawn, whether it is the only one or one of many, is happening now. It is happening in the galaxies still forming at the edges of the observable universe. It is happening in the light of young stars, in the growth of new worlds, in the slow gathering of matter that will one day shine. There is a quiet relief in knowing that the page you are on is not the last. The story of the universe is vast, and you are living in the middle of it, not at the beginning, not at the end, but somewhere between. The ink is still wet on the chapter you inhabit, the next one already forming in the margins. From where you stand, the universe feels old. Stars have burned for billions of years. Galaxies have drifted apart. Light has traveled unimaginable distances. But in the life of the cosmos, this age may be nothing more than an early afternoon. There is more ahead than you can measure, more to come than you can imagine. If this universe is part of a cycle, then its ending will not be final, just as the atoms that make you will be scattered and reused. The universe itself may dissolve into a state from which something new can arise. The shapes may change, the details may shift, but the essence, the ability to form worlds and life and thought, may remain. Even if there is no cycle, even if this is the only universe there will ever be, its story is not yet complete. Stars are still forming in cold clouds of gas. Planets are still gathering around young suns. Life, perhaps, is beginning in places you will never see, under skies you will never know. The part you see now is not the whole. It is one scene in a play that has been running for nearly 14 billion years and may continue for trillions more. Civilizations may rise and fall in that time. Whole species living and dying under the light of stars that have yet to be born are part of this story, not only because you are alive in it now, but because the matter that shapes you will keep moving through it after you are gone. The atoms in your breath will be taken up by other forms, by air, by water, by soil, by other living beings. The carbon in your body may one day be part of a leaf, or a wing, or a new planet entirely. In this way, you are not only a character in the current chapter, you are part of the material that will appear in the chapters yet to be written. You will not be here to read them, but you will be present in them all the same. It is easy to think of yourself as small in this story. You occupy only a fraction of time and space. But the truth is that everything in the universe is both small and essential. A single atom cannot tell the whole story, but without it, the story is incomplete. You are one of countless threads in the fabric of this cosmos, and without your thread, the pattern would not be the same. Perhaps the most humbling thought is that the story is not told only in human terms. The universe does not exist to produce life, yet life is one of its chapters, a chapter that can read itself, reflect on itself, and wonder where it fits. In wondering, you become a mirror for the cosmos, a way for it to see that it is not finished, and maybe it never will be. Even if the stars fade and the galaxies grow dark, even if time stretches toward a quiet ending, there may always be something left, a spark, a fluctuation, a seed from which the story can start again. The same laws that allowed this universe to form will still exist, unless they, too, can end. And if they persist, then the possibility of creation will persist with them. The next universe, if it comes, will not be identical to this one, but it may rhyme with it, shaped by the same deep patterns, written in the same quiet language of matter and energy. When you breathe, you are participating in this unfinished story. Each breath is an exchange with the world around you. Oxygen drawn in, carbon dioxide released, a tiny cycle within the great cycle of the cosmos. You are constantly trading pieces of yourself with everything else, proof that you are not separate from the whole. One day, your body will return entirely to that exchange. Every part of you will be given back, to be used again in forms you cannot imagine. This is not an erasure, but a transformation. In a sense, you will live again, though not in the way you know now. The unfinished nature of the universe's story means that even endings are beginnings. The death of a star creates the heavy elements needed for new planets. The collapse of one galaxy can trigger the birth of others. The quiet dispersal of matter can set the stage for new structures to rise. If this is not the first universe, then your atoms may have played roles before, part of another world, another form, another life entirely. And if it is not the last, they may do so again, somewhere beyond imagining. You will not know it, but it will still be true. There is peace. In this perspective, the story does not require your awareness to continue, nor does it depend on your presence to have meaning. But in the brief span you are here, you are given the rare gift of seeing it, of knowing you are part of it. The universe's story is unfinished, but that is not a flaw. It is the reason it can hold so much past, present, and future, all stretching out like an unbroken thread. The fact that you cannot see its end means it is still alive, still unfolding, and so you rest in that thought, like resting in the middle of a long, beautiful sentence whose ending you cannot yet read. The words ahead are waiting, the ink is still flowing. Somewhere, the next chapter is already beginning. There is a stillness at the far edge of thought, a place where the present seems to blur into something larger, something without beginning or end. You stand in that stillness, not as a figure, not as a body, but as awareness itself. Time stretches in both directions, and you can almost feel it breathe. The universe inhales the slow gathering of matter, the quiet folding of energy into form. It exhales, stars scattering their light, galaxies drifting apart, entropy loosening the weave of creation. Perhaps what you call the birth and death of worlds are simply parts of this breath, too slow to notice within the span of a single lifetime, or even the lifetime of a species. If eternity breathes, then you are living inside one breath right now. This universe, from its first blaze of light to its final quiet, could be no more than the gentle draw and release of cosmic air. You wonder, if there is a breath after this one, what will it be made of? Will it carry traces of the breath we are living now, the residue of ancient stars, the echo of old physics, the faint memory of laws that once shaped everything? You think of the patterns that have carried across time. Hydrogen forming helium in the heart of stars, gravity gathering matter into spheres, light moving at the same speed, no matter the path. If these constants survive the end of our universe, then perhaps the next will inherit their rhythm, a kind of genetic code for reality itself. And yet, the next breath might be entirely different. The constants could change, the particles could be strangers to us, the forces rearranged into new harmonies. Life, if it appears again, may not recognize itself as life at all. It could be something our language cannot reach, something our minds cannot prepare for. but it will still be part of the same great breathing. You picture the end of this universe not as a collapse, but as a pause, a space between breaths as the air is held in perfect stillness. In that pause, time itself may be suspended, every movement slowed to silence. Perhaps it will feel endless from within, though from a greater perspective it might be only an instant. There is comfort in this thought. Endings are not always the end. They are often transitions, moments when one cycle fades to make space for the next. In the forest, a fallen tree becomes the soil for new roots. In the ocean, the death of a wave is simply the rearrangement of water into another shape. The universe, too, may follow this rule, one form dissolving into the substance of the next. You ask yourself what might be remembered, not in the way you remember an event, but in the way matter holds memory without knowing it. The iron in your blood remembers, the star that forged it. The light from a galaxy remembers the direction it has traveled for billions of years. The next universe might carry the memory of ours in the properties of its particles, in the structure of its space, in the whisper of energy that survived the dark. And yet, not everything will survive. Most of what you know will vanish. Every word ever spoken, every thought ever held, every pattern of life and mind may dissolve completely. But perhaps that too is part of eternity's beauty, that it does not cling, that it allows each breath to be entirely itself before letting go. You wonder what it means to leave something behind when nothing is permanent. Maybe the true legacy of a universe is not what it passes forward, but that it existed at all, that it was able to rise from nothing into something, and in doing so became a chapter in eternity's endless library. It is strange to think that you are aware of this while it is happening. Most of the universe is not aware. Stars do not know they shine. Planets do not know they turn. But you, made from their dust, powered by their light, can pause to consider that all of this will someday pass, and yet, in some way, continue. That awareness itself feels like a bridge between breaths. You cannot carry the matter of this universe into the next, but perhaps you can carry the knowing, if not in memory, then in the deep structure of what you are. It is a wild, unprovable hope, but one that settles softly in the mind, that some essence of your being will ripple faintly forward. A seed carried in the wind of eternity. You close your eyes in thought, and the scale of time stretches outward until you can no longer see the edges. The present moment becomes vast, as though it holds all the moments that came before and all that might come after. The boundaries blur, and you are not sure whether you are looking into the future or into a reflection of the past. In this place, the next breath of eternity feels close, not in years or centuries, but in the way a shoreline feels close when you can smell the salt in the air. It is not yet here, but its presence can be sensed in the subtle currents of now. And so you stay at the edge of now, aware that you are both inside the universe and made of it, both temporary and part of something without end. You do not need to know the shape of the next breath to feel its inevitability. Like all that has come before, it will arrive in its own time, in its own way, carrying what it must, leaving behind what it will. You are not separate from that arrival. You are part of the inhale, part of the exhale, part of the pause. Your life is a brief flicker in the cosmic rhythm, and yet it belongs to that rhythm entirely. There is no need to rush toward the next breath. It will come as naturally as night follows day, as waves follow the pull of the moon. You need only be here, in this breath, knowing it is part of something larger than you can hold. And perhaps that is the greatest truth the universe offers, that even as everything changes, the act of becoming never ends. Every breath, whether of a body, a world, or a cosmos, is part of the same eternal motion, the same endless unfolding. The future, then, is not a destination but a continuation. It is the turning of the page, the drawing in of air before another exhale, the gentle swell before another wave. You cannot hold it, but you can feel its approach, like the faint shift of wind before a storm, or the slow lightening of the sky before dawn. Somewhere beyond your knowing, the next breath of eternity is forming. Whether it is born from the ashes of this universe, or from a silence deeper than any we have imagined, it will be real. And when it comes, it will not ask what came before. It will simply begin, as all beginnings do, unaware that it is new, until then you remain here, in this breath, letting it carry you. You are part of its rise and part of its fall. When it ends, you will end with it, but not entirely. Something will carry forward, not you as you know yourself, but the raw material of you, the stardust and energy, the patterns and potentials that have always been here and will always be here in one form or another. And so, you wait at the edge of now, with no need for answers, no demand for certainty. The breath you are in is enough. The breath to come will be its own mystery, unfolding in its own time. You do not need to see it to trust it. You only need to remember that eternity does not end, it changes shape. And you are part of that change, as fleeting as a spark, as lasting as the space that holds it. You leave with the question unspoken, carried like a feather in the dark. If the next breath of eternity is already forming, then perhaps we are all breathing it in, even now.